Volunteered to serve with the Allies in the First World War, and through a tragic twist of fate, Pitso found himself aboard the SS Mendi, a ship that sank off the Isle of Wight in February 1917. Now, over 600 soldiers were killed when the vessel sank on the 21st of February 100 years ago, most of whom were black South African troops heading for France to fight in World War I, a catastrophe that official history largely forgot. Now, Dancing the Death Drill recounts the life of Pitso Motaung. It is a personal and political tale that spans continents and generations. But to talk to us about the book, we're very pleased to be joined by journalist and author, Mr. Fred Khumalo. Fred, a very good morning to you. What a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to be here again. Thank you very much. I hope this story, this narrative is gaining traction in the minds of South Africans.
But what is the story there, Fred? I think a lot of people don't really understand what really happened
Very
there.
briefly, the ship was already on the English Channel, traveling from Plymouth and crossing the English Channel over to France. And it was rammed by another commercial ship, the SS Darrow. And the Mendi went down with 646 men on board. Most of them were black soldiers on their way to fight in France, on the Western Front in France. Obviously, there were some survivors, and that is where we get snippets of what happened. Yeah.
When you say it was run, do you think this was a deliberate attack on the SS Mendi?
Based on the research that I have been able to do for a number of years, I worked on this manuscript. And needless to say, it was very difficult because there was no one alive who had witnessed the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it is based on newspaper accounts of that time. I had to go to the archives. Based on that, it was a pure accident. This commercial ship, which was an Argentinian ship, rammed into the SS Mendi. And contrary to belief, it wasn't a German submarine. And also contrary to belief, the captain of this SS Darrow, which rammed into the Mendi, was an Englishman. His name was Winchester Stump. He was not a Brazilian, as some accounts have said.
My goodness, it seems like there's a lot more to the story than we're actually led to believe. But let's talk about your book now, Dancing the Death Drill. How did the title come about?
The title comes from yet another anecdote as to what happened as the ship was going down. You can imagine about 900 men on this ship that is going down. There's panic, there's screams, and most of the guys cannot swim, have never been able to swim. And it is 5 o'clock in the morning in winter. It is foggy and it is dark. Some people were throwing themselves overboard. But one segment of the soldiery that was on board stood on deck, kind of frozen, hypnotized. Many of those guys were under the command of the chaplain on the ship. His name was Reverend Isaac Joba. Apparently, and this is a story that has been repeated orally, so much so that it has stuck into our minds. As the ship is going down, he raises his hands in the air. He tries to calm these people down, and he starts saying some very evocative words which inform the title of my book here, Dancing the Death Drill. So I'm going to read very briefly. Joba says, "Be quiet and calm, my countrymen, for what is taking place now is exactly what you came here to do. You are going to die, but that is what you came to do. Brothers, we are drilling the drill of death. I, a Xhosa, say you are all my brothers. Zulus, Swazis, Pondos, Basutus, we die like brothers. We are the sons of Africa. Raise your cries, brothers, for though they made us leave our weapons at our home, our voices are left with our bodies. We die like brothers." Those are the words that inform the title to my book.
Let's talk about your main character, which you've sort of centralized the story around, which is, of course, you told me when we were off air that he's a fictional character, Pitso Motaung. Why Pitso Motaung, and how did you convey his message in the story?
Pitso Motaung is a colored person, a person of mixed race. Back then, there were many terms used to describe a colored person. He is an embodiment, a composite of many characters who survived the sinking of the ship. Why did I choose this particular character to convey this story, to be the vehicle to this narrative? It's because he's got a very, very deep personal history himself as a colored person in 1917 Bloemfontein.
Yeah.
You can understand the tensions, the alienation that a colored person would have felt in Bloemfontein of that time, being alienated on the one side by people of African descent and white people looking down upon him as well. So he's stuck in the middle. So I decided to go with that character, very in-your-face kind of character, to tell this story of the ship, because these people, before they enlisted, had personal histories through which we are telling this story. Why did they enlist? And who are these people? Where did they come from? Because they came from different walks of life, different parts of the country, and different classes. Yeah. These were not just poorly educated people. They were traditional chiefs. One of the most remembered people who was on board here was Henry Bokleni. He was the traditional chief of the Mbondo people in the Eastern Cape. He existed, so he is there in the narrative. Another person was Jason Stimela Jingles, who came from the Free State. He survived the sinking and wrote his own personal story.
Okay, so there were a couple of survivors.
Yes,
Fred,
yes.
Do we have the exact number of how many survivors actually
they
there
are
was?
in the book. I can't remember, but the number of those who died is 646.
Yeah.
That includes the soldiers and some of their white officers and members of the crew. So the majority of those who were on the vessel went down with it. The survivors were hospitalized in France. They upon recuperation, they went on to serve on the front until the war was over in 1918. Remember, the ship went down in 1917.
Yeah.
So they stayed in France and fought and served until the war was over in 1918.
Continuing with the drill of death. But Fred, it sounds like you're pretty unsatisfied with the current information that we have of this incident that is out there in the mainstream media. Do you think there could be possible, this could open up a chapter of further investigation as to what really happened aboard that SS Mendi?
Yes, the reason I decided to write this story, to document it, because it's never been captured in our history books.
Yeah.
I did history.
And we hear different tales about what happened.
Exactly. So I decided to clear the air, even though this is kind of fictionalized. It's packed with historical fact, based on how the newspapers of the time covered this story, the sinking itself and what happened afterwards. So I'm hoping, I'm sincerely hoping that this story gets carried out into our schools, into the society at large, so people understand what happened, because history informs how we behave as humanity, as South Africans.
You can't erase history.
Yes, it informs the course that we take as a country.
So should South Africa's history be written to include some of these events, you feel, Fred?
Yes, I do feel, because our histories, because there are so many histories, our histories have been kind of marginalized. Those so-called marginal and fringe histories of black people, people who are not white, their contribution to the many wars, not just the First World War, not just the Mendi story, the story of the South African War, which was called the Anglo-Boer War.
Yes.
You will be amazed at the information that is coming through. There are pictures to prove, new documentation that proves that there were many black people who were in these concentration camps. For a long time, we believed the concentration camps were the preserve of Africans, women and children only. So these stories must come out.
Absolutely. Fred, your book, have you released it internationally? I want to know how it was received in Britain.
The book has been published in South Africa and the UK.
Yes.
It came out simultaneously, both in South Africa and the UK.
How did
so
it
there's been a huge buzz, but I hope that translates into real sales, you know. I'm a writer, I want to see what people are doing, if they're buying it, and also not just buy it, but read it.
Absolutely.
Read it and share the story.
And Fred, just to wrap it off, any translations into French, Zulu, Afrikaans? Are you going to do any of that?
I have written a version of the Mendi story in Zulu, because that's my mother tongue. But that hasn't been published yet. hopefully later this year. I do not know. There is no official confirmation, but Fred Khumalo has written it just to absolve himself, to say, how can a Zulu man write only in English such a powerful and beautiful and very important narrative?
Where can people get your book, Fred?
The book is available countrywide at all reputable bookstores, and it retails at 230 rand.
All right, Fred.
It's also available as a Kindle book, because I know many kids prefer electronics.
All right, well, I'm keeping that one. Thank you so much for coming in studio and sharing your story with us. That was journalist and author Mr. Fred Khumalo sharing with us the title of his book, Dancing the Drill of Death, or rather the Death Drill, which of course recounts the life of Pitso Motaung. It is of course a personal and political tale that spans continents and generations. Let's take a quick ad break, and after that the sports guru is here with your sports news. You don't want to miss that.